What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Backstage Journal podcast. My name is Rhett, and welcome to another episode. We're in season 3. If this is your first time catching the Backstage Journal pod, welcome. Today's guest is Mark Letieri. Mark is one of the best guitar players out there right now, in my opinion, at least. I've been following Mark online for years. Love his work with Fearless Flyers, Snarky Puppy, his own original stuff. I actually bought one of his video courses last year and was working through that, and it actually kind of opened me up to some new concepts that I have used on the channel quite a bit. I would say used in gigs, but you know, there hasn't been any gigs since I took that course, but I will use them the next time I gig. So if you're new here, this podcast exists on YouTube, on my second channel, Rhett Shull Studio, as well as in audio form where all fine podcasts are downloaded, as well as my website. I launched a new website for the podcast called Backstagejournalpod.com. There you can go back and listen to past episodes, read up a little more on the guests. You can write comments and you suggest future guests and all that kind of stuff. So I highly recommend you check that out. There's also a donate button. If you would like to donate to support the show, I would really appreciate that. It's going to go directly to supporting this podcast and covering its costs. And so would love for you to check that out if you're interested, backstagejournalpod.com. Also, once again, shout out to our editor, Kevin Nolan. His stuff is linked down below. Kevin's been doing a great job with the podcast, and he's a really great guitar player himself. Actually might need to have him on the show sometime soon. So, all the information to support the show and about our guest, Mark Letieri, his stuff, his new album, his socials, everything is all linked in the description box of the YouTube video and in the show notes if you're listening to the podcast online. All right, so before we get to the interview, as is tradition around here, we are going to take a voicemail from a listener. If you'd like to leave a voicemail to be played on the podcast, you can call 470-222-5851. Here is this week's voicemail.
Hey, Rhett, this is Chris. I was just wondering what the most embarrassing thing you've ever done in a guitar store is.
This is a really good question, Chris. All right, so I'm sure there's countless times that I've embarrassed myself over the years, but I didn't know enough to really be embarrassed by it, if that makes any sense. Like, I'm sure I've said things that sounded dumb or played things that sounded terrible or whatever. Like, we've all been there. We've all been that guy or girl at the guitar store at some point in our lives. But there is one moment that comes to mind. This happened probably 4 or 5 years ago at a guitar store in California that shall remain nameless, because they're a somewhat well-known guitar store, vintage guitar store. And was in there with my dad. We were walking around just like looking at it, and they had a really great selection of stuff. And we walked in, guy behind the counter is, "Oh, can I help you with anything?" "No, we're good. Thanks, man." And on the wall was this beautiful Blackguard Telly. It was white, Blackguard. It must have been a 50, I don't know, 53, 54, something like that. And I was like, "Oh man, this is great. I've never played one of these." So I just picked it up off the wall, sat down, pulled out a pick, started playing it, played some blues licks or whatever, just kind of banged around on this guitar for a minute, and I put it back. And after wandering around for a few more minutes, I walked back up to the front counter and was like, "Hey man, what's the story with that Telly over there? That thing's really nice." He's like, "Oh, that's actually not for sale. It's part of our collection. It was one of Keith Richards' Blackguards. It never gets played. We don't let anybody touch it. It's just there for display purposes." I was like, "Oh, cool. Yeah, no, I definitely didn't just play it, and I definitely didn't just bang around on it and play some dad blues licks for about 3 or 4 minutes. That's so cool. I only looked at it and admired it from afar." So I did feel pretty embarrassed. But also, it is weird that they would have a quote unquote museum piece out there that anybody could just, it's not like it was up, way out of reach. It was just right there on the wall, sitting next to like a gold top and a, 54, 55 Strat or something. So, I guess the lesson there is, ask permission. We always ask permission before we touch things, right? So that's my embarrassing guitar story. I'm sure as soon as I'm done recording this, I'm going to think up of another example that is actually more embarrassing that I've probably blocked from my memory because it's so embarrassing. But yeah, like I said, you want to leave a voicemail for next week, 470-222-5851. All right. Mark Letieri, what an amazing guy. There's sometimes when you get to meet people and talk to people. Well, let me back up. Let me say this. You know the saying, don't meet your heroes, right? Where the sentiment behind the saying is like, well, you hold these people up, you look up to them for so long, and then when you actually meet them, they don't meet your expectations. Mark Letieri is not that. He's a hero that you should meet and you should talk to. He is incredibly kind, amazing guitar player, amazing musician and artist, and in this interview drops some serious wisdom for guitar players, especially some of you younger players out there that might want to make a living as a guitar player or any musician. 2021 and beyond, you should listen to Mark's words here because he knows what he's talking about. So one quick caveat here. If you're watching this on YouTube, you're going to notice that there's no video of this interview with Mark, and that's because I forgot to hit record on Zoom, and stupid oversight on my part. Mark, I apologize. Thank you for taking the time to be on my channel and let me interview you, and I promise I will make it up to you somehow because I feel stupid and embarrassed that I forgot to record the video. The audio's all there, though. It's going to sound great. Kevin's going to kill the mix. It's going to sound amazing. You should listen to this in headphones. It's going to sound crispy and great. And I've rambled enough. Without any further ado, here's my interview with the one and only Mark Letieri. That'd be nice. Okay. Always nice to have some redundancy.
I am in the red.
As am I, as
here,
they say.
As they say. Yes. All right.
So wait,
let's go.
It's snowing right now where you guys are? Like in
yeah, so it snowed the last 2 days, and now it's just super cold. So, and my daughter like takes forever to get dressed. Decide she wants to do something, and so like right when we were supposed to do this, she was like, "All right, let's go."
So I haven't spent much time in Fort Worth, but I imagine the snow doesn't. It's probably like Atlanta, where it doesn't happen that often, and so when it does, it's a pretty big deal. Or is it
a big deal? Yeah, I mean, stuff closes a lot, and I mean, and since I've lived here, it's happened on a couple. Happened on a couple occasions.
Right.
Hang on, let me get rid of that. There we go.
Nice.
We're real high tech up here. It's happened on a couple occasions, but today's been nice and snowy.
I don't know if you remember, almost like 10 years ago, this made national news, but we got it was like Snowmageddon in Atlanta, where one year we got like literally 2 inches. But the time of day, it started snowing in the middle of the day, and at 12 noon, the mayor of Atlanta just said, "Okay, everyone go home." And so they put about like 2 million people on the road while it was snowing. And it was a literal disaster. People were stuck and stranded on the highways for 18 plus hours. People were abandoning their cars and walking home like 6, 8, 10 miles home. Chick-fil-A's were like cooking meals and walking out on I-85 to people and just handing meals out to people. There was a woman that gave birth on an underpass because they couldn't get to the hospital. Like 2 inches of snow brought this city
like a Michael Bay movie.
It really was, man. They made fun of us on SNL that week, the whole deal. Like it was we earned it. But
oh man. Well, hey,
us Southerners, man, we don't play with snow. So
yeah, right.
Well, dude, thanks for coming on, man. This is
thanks for having me, dude.
I followed your stuff for a very long time, and there's a running theme for me on this season of my podcast, which is, I always try and interview people and talk to people that I really respect and look up to. And this season, I've really tried to go for the heavy hitters, and you are one of those players for me.
Thanks, man.
You are one of the best players, one of my favorite guitar players out today, doing stuff. Your style, your knowledge, your influence. We're gonna get into all that. But
thanks, buddy.
Yeah, man,
appreciate it.
You're killing it. So I want to start by asking you, give me a little bit of your background. So you're in Fort Worth now.
Mm-hmm.
What was it like, a young Mark Letieri growing up, picking up guitar, all that kind of stuff?
Well, young Mark was in the San Francisco Bay Area, in a town called Menlo Park.
Nice.
Which is known now, I guess, as being the city where Facebook is headquartered.
Oh.
So yeah, it was kind of, heart of the Silicon Valley tech thing, and so, but I started playing guitar in the mid 90s during the first tech bubble.
Right.
And I guess I would liken it to most suburban aged kids picking up an instrument and starting a band with their friends and just learning songs from either a guitar teacher or from, for us, it was like we had tablature at that point on the internet.
Yeah.
A little bit, kind of. And we were just always listening to the radio together, my friends and I, and trading CDs and tapes and practicing together and staying up all night, jamming and listening to music and, getting in trouble and just, just doing things that adolescent boys do. Right.
Right.
And that was sort of, guitar was just a part of that, it was part of my social life in a sense, it was my peer group with my friends. But we were all very passionate about it. And some of us turned it into a career, and I was one of those people that did. And, I started listening to my parents' music first, because that's what was being played in the house. And
what were they listening to? What were they turning you on to?
Well, let's see. My folks are they're in their early 70s now. So, they're, hippie kids, kind of not, a little bit, but they were around during all that.
Yeah.
That Jackson Browne song in 69, I was 21, that's my dad, right? And my mom and dad. So they were all there for that. So the 60s music was big in our house. And 70s music as well. And a little bit of the 80s kind of stuff. So everything from what we would consider now to be classic rock and Motown and, 50s music, rock and roll from the 50s and soul music from the 50s. I just remember they would put on the classic rock or the classic soul station or something in the car, and that we would be listening to, So I grew up with a lot of great music in the house.
Yeah.
Thankfully. And I think, most probably players my age did, because our parents were probably all kind of the same age,
Right.
So that was ingrained in me early on. But then, 12, 13, when I was really kind of getting into guitar, you start listening to music on your own, and you find the radio for yourself and mow a couple lawns, get some CD money,
Yep.
go down to, ride your bike down to Tower Records. Well, actually for us, it was the Warehouse. That was the name of the record store.
What was the first CD that you remember buying with your own money?
The first, let me think. I think the first cassette I bought, I was kind of late to the CD game. I was like kind of the last kid on the block to get a CD player and the last kid to get cable TV. But I remember the first cassette I think I got with my own money was a Stone Temple Pilots album, the Purple album.
Strong.
Or they just called it Purple, I think it was.
Strong choice, man.
Yeah. I mean, and the lyrics were pretty weird to a 12-year-old. But I kind of just was listening to the guitar playing and the musicianship of it.
I had a similar experience of around 12 or 13. My neighbor across the street was the kid that got me interested in guitar. He was a year older and was playing. Yeah. And he let me borrow. He had the Wall CD set. And 13 years old, having never heard of Pink Floyd or anything like that before, listening to that album, I remember sitting in my room just thinking, what is this? There's whole parts of this that aren't songs. There's just talking, and they're in some apartment, and there's some woman and asking about guitars. This is crazy.
Yeah. My experience with that was with the Jimi Hendrix Experience. My dad came home from a business trip and brought it home because I was kind of talking, he knew I was in love with guitar, and I had sort of talked about, I was like, my friends say I should listen to Jimi Hendrix. And he was like, are you sure you're ready for that? Are you ready? Are you really ready? And I was like, what do you mean? Yeah, totally. I like, he's like, okay,
Right,
and so he came back from a business trip with Are You Experienced on a cassette.
Wow.
And I freaked out. Cause I mean, what? I had never heard sound be manipulated in that way before.
Yeah. The way that record opens, with the reverse and the panning and all that kind of stuff, it had to have blown your mind.
Yeah. So I didn't know what was going on, but I knew I loved it.
Yeah.
and wanted to harness that power in some way. So that really kind of sparked it.
So were your parents, you would say your family was pretty supportive of you like early on when you were getting into music, and what was that like?
Yeah, they were. I'm thankful for that. And I don't come from a family of quote unquote musicians, like no one's a professional musician or anything, but they all love music, and some of them play a little bit or sing a little bit. So that was always supported. My mom's very artistic in the visual arts, and so she got it pretty quick. And my dad just loves music, and he loves to write and things like that. Words. He was a speech writer for part of his career, so he's used to being creative in that respect. So they knew what it meant to me, and they saw that it was not a hobby.
Right.
I think they were glad that it was a hobby, or that it could have been, because they saw that how much I liked it and how excited it made me feel, and how I had a nice little friend group, based around it and everything. But, as I started to get older, kind of like finishing up college and that, I definitely sort of had to show that it could be a job, but it didn't take long, because they saw how hard I was working and that I was busy and making my rent.
Yeah. Right.
I wasn't calling them asking for money or anything. I was like, yeah, I got it,
So
they were like, oh, okay.
At what point did you start to realize, that this could be something that you did for your living? Was that always at the front of your mind, playing guitar, or did it just kind of click one day?
Yeah, not so much. I think it was definitely a dream, but I didn't know how to quantify it yet. Like that just took time. I think for a lot of my teen years was always just like, well, it'd be nice if, maybe one day it'll happen or something like that. But finishing up college, I just was like, you know what? I think I have a plan now as how I can try to do this.
Right. Right.
And so it started to become, it was more tactile.
Yeah.
By that point. But when you're starting out, my idea of success as a 14-year-old was like, I had to be in a famous rock band. I had to be in Guns N' Roses or something. That meant,
right.
Or something like that. Now, which is a really silly thing to think, because, well, you're 14, so you're silly anyway. But like, I had a great guitar teacher who was making a great living playing as a guitar teacher. So I don't know why it didn't occur to me like, yeah, you could teach guitar. You can record guitar. You can write music for people. You can do gear stuff. You can do all these things in music. You don't have to be Slash.
Right. Right.
But when you're 14, Slash is the best. So
yeah.
And he still is now in my 30s. Right.
Well, it was also a different time at that point too, because we didn't have any context. I think you and I are roughly the same age. And
probably so. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm about to turn 31 in a couple of weeks. And so when I'm
a little older than you.
Okay. Well, I said roughly, there's
roughly,
a window there.
Yeah.
Okay. But when I was starting out, it was a similar kind of thing. Nobody in my family were musicians. There was no professional. I didn't know that you could make a living in music. Whereas nowadays with things like YouTube and Instagram, I feel like kids that are coming up now, there's so many, with guys like you, Pete Thorne I had on the podcast a couple weeks ago, like
Sweet.
People that have been, making content and talking about being a pro musician and like showing what it actually looks like to do. It's sort of, it's making it, I think, more accessible to people, which is part of actually a really big part of what I wanted to do with my YouTube channel when I started out a few years ago. Is like, I want to make this accessible to people, make stuff that if I was watching this at 14, I could get something out of it. But
totally.
So you had a guitar teacher from the start, or were you self-taught? Like, what was all that like?
Kind of on and off. Both would be the short answer. Like, my first ever guitar teacher was my friend's mom. And she taught me guitar because my mom was teaching me and my buddy, her son, art.
Nice.
And so it was like this little trade-off thing. So we'd have like a little art class, then we have a little guitar class, I studied with another local teacher. I would just go over to her house. She would show me some tablature and stuff like that. That was great. Her name is Allison White. She, I think she might even still be teaching in the Palo Alto, Menlo Park area. But so she introduced me to tablature.
Yeah.
And so then once I knew how to read that, I would go on Harmony Central and download stuff, illegally probably, but
right.
No, those tabs, half of them were wrong completely anyway, but which is good because it trained my ear to be like, this doesn't sound like
Yes.
what I'm reading here, and then getting into high school, I had a really awesome teacher named Gordon Kahn, and he was a student of Joe Satriani's back in the day.
Right.
And I was a huge Satch fan, and so I was like, well, can I please take lessons from this, from Gordon? And so Gordon would come by the house, and we got real serious about theory and stuff, like real guitar lessons. I mean, like if I was not sounding good one week, he'd be like, dude, you're wasting, don't waste your time, don't waste your money. Like, right. Practice, so he held me accountable, and I'm really grateful for all that. And then I was self-taught for a while, and then up until like maybe my junior year of college, I think it was, I studied for about a year and a half with the jazz guitar teacher Tom Burchill at my university as an elective, and that was really cool because he got me really into chords and chord harmony and writing chord progressions and that kind of thing. It wasn't really straight ahead jazz because I wasn't interested in doing that guitar, necessarily, but he knew that I had a hankering for learning new cool sounds. And so he taught me jazz as it applied to kind of maybe more what I wanted to do with the guitar. So, those were my teachers, and then, just a lot of self-discovery, playing to records, just asking my friends to show me stuff, just right. The way we all kind of discover things. So for the last, I don't know, when did I get out of college? 2005. So since then, it's just been self-discovery, and I've had some great older players, kind of show me stuff, mentors, that kind of thing. And so now I'm just sort of grabbing knowledge from wherever.
So when you first started to learn theory, because I'm fascinated by this idea of theory and learning theory and the benefits of it. How much of the stuff that you studied early on in terms of what you described as like heavy hitting theory are you still using today or informs what you use today? I mean, I'm assuming you guys started at the basics, major scale and basic harmonic concepts and things like that. And did you go super deep into a lot of more obscure, quote unquote, theoretical knowledge, or did you kind of keep it pretty surface level?
Well, I mean, I think the way it was kind of brought to me was as a response to me handing someone a piece of music, or in this case, Gordon, a piece of music, and going like, what is this? Why does it sound like this? Oh, that's the Phrygian scale. That's the third mode of the major, of the major scale. Let's work on modes.
Right.
And
okay.
Like, okay. He's like, you want to know how to play this modal guitar rock that you love. You need to know the modes. I said, okay, great. So we dug into that real deep. And then in college, there was a little bit of the jazz harmony stuff. And then now it's kind of like digging a little bit deeper. One of my really close friends, this guy, Noel Johnston, who's a really epic modal dork. I'm going to call him a dork because I want him to hear this. But he's just a modal sensei. And so he's always throwing crazy harmonic concepts at me, and I try to keep up. It's like the modes of the Hungarian minor scale and the melodic minor flat dominant snowblower scale. I can't even keep up with half the names of these things, but I'm finding ways to apply it, without maybe going totally nuts.
That seems that you had a really great introduction to harmony at the very beginning, because it's like you stepped into it with a practical application from the very beginning. Right. You were like, hey, I need to, what is this solo? What's going on here? It's like, okay,
exactly.
Well, here's this. So you already sort of had the sound in your ear, and you were just putting terminology to it.
Yeah, because I just wanted to understand what it was. And it's, and now I can communicate it. And so I wouldn't consider myself a theory guru in any course, but I definitely have like a great solid functional knowledge of like Western pop harmony, and I can, get my way around tunes because of it. But, I still am very much on a creative level. I'm still very much whatever I hear, whatever I feel. And then I'll go back and kind of find out the technical, it's like, okay, well, this is clearly this, and this is I'm going to need to flat the 9 here. If this is going to have to change to this, I'll kind of document it after the fact, after I've already come up with something that I thought sounded good.
Right.
So whereas, there, some people would they create based off the science.
Yeah.
I'm sort of the other way around.
I personally, my opinion on that is it's sort of putting the cart before the horse. It's like trying to write a story saying like, well, I'm going to use these words from the vocabulary and I'm going to put them together in this sort of grammatical form for the sake of it.
Well, but you have to understand, I mean, there is truth to all of that though, because there is a science to all of it that's quantified. So that's, that you can place with the sounds. And so if your brain works that you want to kind of put the cart before the horse, like it works for those kinds. I'm just not that, my brain isn't that far left. Maybe.
I'm not either.
But yeah, I mean, I'm always, I'm a firm believer is that like at the end result, if it sounds good, I don't care how you got there.
Right.
So it's
100%
for everybody. Yeah.
So college, what was that like for you? Where did you go? What was it a pretty transformative experience for your musicianship?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I went to Texas Christian University, AKA TCU, which is a really, really great school. And I studied advertising and public relations there. So again, kind of the family business a little bit. So fell into that thinking that might be my career.
Right.
Maybe not, I think, but in a sense I was probably settling for it to be my career, because I really wanted to play guitar and make music, but I liked it. I liked it enough to go to college to do it. I took it seriously, studied really hard, did pretty good, graduated in 4 years.
No victory lap.
No victory lap. I ran track. I was on the track team there for 4 years. That was a whole other part of my life, competitive sports. I'm long since retired from that. Thankfully, my hips thank me very much.
Right.
But anyway, so I was kind of serving those two disciplines pretty seriously while also playing guitar and practicing and not maybe studying as hard as I should have at some points, but because I would rather just jam in a room. But I formed a band real quick with some friends, and that was my first experience, kind of leading a quote unquote real band that could sort of make money and play at a bar.
Right.
And so that was just the best, playing Friday night at the college dive bar till 2 a.m. This is the best. So why would you not want to do that?
Yeah.
So that was my first experience there. And, I was writing a lot of songs and just discovering all kinds of music. I started listening to more jazz in college and funk and R&B and got really deep into Prince and gospel music and all these other influences that were coming in. And some of that came from the people that I was hanging out with. I ended up playing in the gospel choir at TCU as a guitar player.
Yep.
Just because I had heard about, how great gospel musicians were. From some friends in the Bay Area who were kind of doing that. And I was like, cool, I need to find that here. And so they had the choir, they had a drummer. Actually, the first time I ever saw the choir, they were performing in the student union and it was just them and a drummer. And I was like, this is awesome. And the drummer is great. I'm looking for a drummer to play with. Hey, can I be in the gospel choir and also play with the drummer? And so he and I became really good friends. We started a band and we would play with the choir and stuff. And then, on a professional level, it was really cool because a lot of those people that were in the choir were tied into different churches in the area. And then so when I got out of college, I would play at those churches on Sunday or do a little session with one of the, the singers for the little record that they were making. And so it became work. I was getting work through this now. So I was like, okay, cool. I feel like a pro now.
Yeah.
People are asking me to do things.
Yeah. There's sort of a, I don't know how to describe it. The term that's coming to my head right now is almost like a church to highway that's really big here in Atlanta.
Sure. Yeah, I bet.
The mega church scene. I did it I did it full time for almost 5 years, basically on circuits between 4 different churches. Every Sunday, every Wednesday, every Thursday, you were playing somewhere.
Right.
And the gospel thing is no joke. If anyone out there who's listening is unfamiliar, you may be thinking of worship music or gospel music as your typical CCM, contemporary Christian music kind of stuff. And it's not. It's a very different thing. It's a very different tradition. It's very different practice, very different harmonically. I played at a really big gospel church up here for a few years, and that was every Sunday, dude. For me, it was like I was just white knuckling, barely hanging on the whole time. Like
right, yeah,
all the changes and following. I mean, it was wild. But knowing you and knowing how you play, that makes a ton of sense. Knowing that you got into that scene in college, because I can tell as an observer and a listener that it's informed your playing. I mean, would you?
Totally. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I kind of had a handle on the groove thing, like the time feel thing, because I had gotten into that early enough to where I had gotten some practice there and played with some people that were doing that. But the harmonic stuff in gospel really opened my eyes, and I'm still discovering new ways of getting around those changes. You know, that'll be a pursuit forever. And so I'm sorry, that's my kid.
That's okay.
That part of the language is I think the thing that, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's all of it. I love the way that the chords go, but I love the way that they feel too. And so, I studied a lot of great, gospel guitar players, Jonathan Dubose and Spanky Alford. And like, there's a bunch of incredible young cats, Eric Walls and Jairus Mose. And I mean, there's a guy in Mississippi, Justin Gray, who's just incredible. These guys, they play like organ players.
Yes. Yes.
And so I'm, thankfully I can call those guys friends now. And we play together and I just watch them with awe, try to soak up whatever I can from these guys, but immediately when I had the opportunity to get into that scene, I was like, yes, sign me up.
Right.
Like, please. And so, like you, I was playing at a church every Sunday, occasionally on Wednesdays. I was playing in cover bands on Fridays and Saturdays. I was always running some original band of some kind, it's into failure. But you got to get that practice in.
It's all about the reps, man. You got to.
Yeah. And then, so a lot of my recording session stuff was like gospel work.
Right. And
that led to, to the folks that I record with now, like Kirk Franklin and Fred Hammond and Anthony Evans and people like that. Yeah, man. I mean, it's definitely a big part of my sound, and I owe a ton of what I do to that community and that language.
Yeah. So would you say, because you're describing you kind of just the way I'm seeing you got into work as a professional guitar player. It's just you took one opportunity, and then from that, 3 or 4 other ones popped up, and you just started taking more and more stuff on. And did you just keep doing that until the point where it was like, okay, I don't really have time for anything else. This is my full-time living. Or was there a time where you just said, okay, this is it. I am a guitar player now. This is what I do for my living.
Sure. Well, right out of college, I took a day job. It was like kind of part-time at a sales company that did like promotional product sales. And I actually got the gig because I was playing in this Texas country band, and the drummer, his old high school buddy, owned this company and was like, hey man, if you need to make some extra money, like, during the day, like I'm sure Robert will hire you. And I was like, okay, cool. So I worked there, and thankfully I was able to save up some money while I was, running around with my head cut off at night, playing all these different gigs. So I did that for like 2.5 years, and then finally was just like, okay, I think I should stop going to work every day. And I had a couple friends who, I had met, and they were like, wait a minute, you don't do this full time? And I was like, no, man, that's crazy. Like what? I was like, I gotta be responsible. And and they're like, dude, just quit your job. Like you'll be fine.
Right.
And so I was like, oh, okay. And I was kind of scared. Cause like I said, I don't come from a family of professional musicians. So I was the first one to really do it. I think I'm the first. I think there might be some people on my mom's side, like cousins who had done it. Right. But I'm the first Letieri that I know of that was a full-time musician. And so I had no parameters for it. And so, so I took that leap, and then stuff just started getting busier and busier, and I didn't really ever say no to anything unless it was something that I just knew I could, like, Mark, we heard you're a guitar player. Could you play 3 hours of unaccompanied classical guitar at our wedding? No.
You don't want me to do that.
No, I can't. You don't want me to do that. I mean, I could maybe play some acoustic pop stuff, and so I did it. That was a thing that I did at one point, but I knew my limitations, but also just said a lot of yeses.
Right.
And then figured out how to make it sound like I knew what I was doing.
Did that ever backfire on you? Did you ever get into a situation where you felt either spread too thin or?
Oh, definitely. Yes. I mean, yeah, definitely spread too thin. And, which is not a good position to get yourself in because something will suffer.
Yeah.
You will have one bad gig that week because you didn't spend enough time preparing for it. And then you feel bad about that.
One of my teachers at AIM used to always say, the best thing you can learn is to say no and know when to say no.
Yeah. It's hard to do. It's an incredibly hard skill to have. And I'm still trying to learn how to do it because, there is this like fear playing music full time that like, if you say no, you won't have work.
Right.
Or they'll just get somebody else.
Yeah. Because you never know what the next gig is going to be. It's like you might have a run, even if you have stuff scheduled out 6 months in advance. Well, what's after?
Oh, look at 2020.
Exactly, man.
Yeah, that's the strange thing about this business is that it can all change in an instant.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like your defense mechanism to just say yes all the time.
Right.
Because you want to not be without work.
It's without work, and it's also for me. It was this fear of like, man, because like you and like every musician out there, we can all point to certain gigs that you've played and said, oh, well, I met this person at that gig, and through this connection, like all this other stuff opened up. And the thing that always sat at the back of my mind for turning stuff down, and even now, like turning stuff down, I feel horrible because it's like, man, well, what am I missing out on? Who am I not going to meet at that gig? Who, what other opportunity am I not going to get because I said no to this thing for whatever reason? And it's a struggle, man, always.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm always trying to kind of like, I have my metrics for saying yes. Right. And they're different for everybody. It's like, are you helping a friend? Is it going to be financially good? Is it good? Are there connections that you're going to make? Is the music cool? If you can check off a couple of those boxes, then you should probably do it.
Yes.
If you can only check off one, then it better be a very important box, and I check off the friend box all the time because I love playing music with my friends.
Yep.
I don't care if it's not going to pay anything or no one's going to hear it, but they're my buddies and they've influenced me and done so much for me that like, I'll always do that.
Yeah. Well, the rule it's always been described to me as the rule of three. It's the money, the music, and the hang. And
exactly.
A good gig has two of the three. It's either got the music and the hang, but no money, or it's got the money and the hang, but the music's not really great. Very, very rarely do you get a gig that offers all three. And if it does, you hold on to that gig for dear life and don't ever let go of it, That's
the rules, the rule of three. Thank you. Yeah, I always extend it beyond 3, which is probably why I have such a problem saying no, because it's like it's the rule of 7.
Well, let me pull my chart out and see how it compares.
Right,
man. So how did you? I'm interested too. So you went to school for public relations and advertising, right? That was your thing. Are there any skills that you learned in that?
There, actually,
that you
there are.
Use as a guitar player.
I'm a real stickler for proofreading and grammar and things like that, which is funny because I'll make those mistakes, but like, I'm pretty good at like editing press releases for records.
Nice.
I can write my own if I need to, but I think in a lot of ways, it just sort of helped me understand the value of a brand. And you and I were kind of talking about this earlier about like YouTube and kind of what your angle is. Right.
Yeah.
And so, I've learned a little bit about how to kind of put that together for myself. And of course I'm still refining it and tweaking it, but I understand that if I'm going to do this from an artistic perspective, like as an artist, especially like it, the more things that are identifiable as mine, not in that sense that I take ownership of them, but that they are, identified as a Mark Letieri thing, right? That's important. And I need to make sure that whatever I put forth, somehow attaches itself to that,
Right.
So
It's so important, man, especially nowadays, like with the power of social media. And I think younger generations of players really understand this, but you're right. It's that idea. And sometimes I think the word brand can sound sort of icky to some people, but it's not like you are marketing yourself as like Monsanto or Pepsi or something like that. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
So when I think of your brand from my perspective, having followed you for years, it is the funk, R&B, gospel, rock thing. A big thing that comes to mind is the baritone stuff, the baritone funk jams. I don't know if that was an intentional thing that you did on Instagram, but
yes and no.
it sticks, man. In fact, I
thanks.
see that Dan Electro back there. Like it's
oh yeah, there it is.
I bought that actually. I bought that model because I've seen you play it,
nice
time and time again. But
cool.
So yeah, was that when you started out doing the Instagram thing? Was that intentional, or was it just like, oh, this is fun, I'm gonna start posting videos of me playing?
It's kind of both. I actually didn't really want to do it at first. I kind of like looked at it maybe as like, I don't know, it's not really for me, man. Like I don't want to be a
influencer.
I hate to say the term, the Instagram guitar player or whatever. Yeah, I don't even know what that is, right? But before I started, I thought I knew what that was, and I thought it wasn't for me.
Right.
And it took a friend of mine, a young friend, to say like, dude, it doesn't matter. Like, that's just what people do. Like, have fun with it. Do what you do. Just film it for 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Just whatever. Like if you're, it'd be cool. I think it was probably like, it'll help you sell your sound slice courses. I think is probably what it is. Corey Richardson, the guy that does sound slice. He was like, dude, you should just start posting stuff on Instagram.
Yeah.
If you're going to have something out.
Right.
And I was like, okay. And yeah, so I was pretty active in the beginning and still active now. I think maybe I post once a week, I guess, which is probably a lot. I might post less,
right,
because sometimes stuff takes time to put together if it's like kind of a bit of a production or something. But anyway, all this to say, I really all of a sudden saw the value of it, to kind of like establish my own little TV channel where I show all the different programming, that I have, and you can come check it out. You can channel. That's what it is. Instagram is channel surfing, man.
Right.
So if you got something cool on your channel, people stop there for a little bit.
Yeah.
And it soon became very apparent that I was glad that I started doing it because I just made connections with listeners all over the world,
Right.
And which is something that I if this were 1985, for example, I would have no idea. I guess the parameters were just different and there was just another way you would do that.
Right.
But, as being 2021, I don't know how other way to get your stuff. Has it
helped you land any gigs, like your profile online and people knowing, your thing and all that kind of stuff?
Probably in a sort of like peripheral back end way. Just because I think it's raised a profile for me. I don't think I've had anyone or nothing stands out where someone says, I saw you on Instagram, therefore I would like you to do this. That's never really happened.
Well, oftentimes opportunities aren't that cut and dry.
Well, but I think people think that maybe they are.
Right.
And like, so if you're a young player wanting to get into social media, don't expect that to be the norm.
Right.
Right. But you can position it to where like, if your profile is elevated, things start to happen.
Right.
It's easier to market your album, for example, right?
Yes.
If you have a product or something that you are trying to get people to listen to or buy or play or whatever, it helps if you have an elevated profile and a voice that people can respond to. Right. But yeah, I don't think I'm probably forgetting something, but yeah, I don't think there has been something that was like, hi, Mark Letieri, I checked out your Instagram profile. Here is your Paul Reed Smith guitar. Right. Like it didn't work that way.
Right.
So
tell me about too, because speaking of gigs, you've played in some pretty influential bands over the last 5 to 10 years, right?
I guess. Depends on who your influences are.
Well, for me, influences for me, I'll say.
Right on.
How did how did the stuff, because over the last couple of years you've done stuff, the Fearless Flyers, and which, my God, every single time one of those things gets posted, it's mind-boggling to me.
Thanks, man. We're overdue. We didn't get to make a record this year, unfortunately, but maybe later this year we can get something together.
Can I just ask, what is it like being able to play with Nate Smith?
He's pretty good at drums.
You know what he is? He's not bad.
He's been practicing. It's awesome. Yeah. I mean, he's got such a singular language, and I don't mean singular in that he's not versatile. I just mean that like everything he does sounds like Nate.
Right.
And it has this thing about it, and it's just infectious, and you just want to play it all the time.
He's got the thing that all my favorite drummers have, which is like, when you listen to his solo records, I think it comes through a lot, but he is a pretty holistic, I would say, musician in that.
Well, he's an incredible writer and arranger too.
Yeah.
And I think when you hear a great instrumentalist, all of our favorite instrumentalists also have really cool composing abilities.
Right.
At least for me. Sorry, all of my deep influences are people that just, whether or not they're virtuoso players or not, they always make great sounding music.
Right.
And so, yeah, Nate's no exception there.
Yeah. That's amazing, man. How did that project start?
I had nothing to do with it. So I got an email from Corey Wong.
You got a DM.
No, I didn't. It was not. This
Mark
was an
Lettieri,
email.
I've seen your
This was a
Instagram.
serious request. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, a lot of the, you never know what's going on in the DMs there these days. But Corey sent me an email, and it was pretty brief. It was just sort of like, hey, this is Corey from Wolfpack, and we're wanting to start a label, I think it was described, and we're going to start putting music out on this label. The first project we want to do is this. And it just was he said like me, guitar, Joe Dart, bass. I think it said, hopefully Nate Smith drums, hopefully you baritone guitar. And I was like, what are we doing? Like what? And, I didn't really, and I called him and I was like, Down, what are we doing, man? Like, what is this? I don't know you. You don't know me. Like,
right.
I kind of puffed my chest a little bit,
Yeah.
And he explained it to me. I was like, all right, I'll think about it. And I thought about it for about 10 minutes. And I was like, dude, you're an idiot if you don't do this. Like, you're an idiot if you think that, because of some vague email that you shouldn't be part of this. So I had to I called him back. I was like, hey, man, I'm sorry. Tell me where to go. Where do we got to go? LA, what are we doing? And so that was how it started,
That's so crazy.
I didn't know anything about the flight suits or the mic stands and the whole aesthetic of it. But I also kind of didn't know I was only really going to be playing baritone guitar.
Right.
Because at the point, when he asked me about that, I wasn't totally, to me, the baritone thing was like a party trick.
Right.
Like I hadn't quite come to the realization that like, okay, no, dude, you should really, you got a thing here. Maybe you should take it seriously, you idiot.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, I'm going to get to play real guitar. Right. And he was like, well, yeah, but we were hoping you'd play baritone. And I was like, all right, yeah, fine, whatever. And then, again, so I was like, of course I had to be like, yeah, that was dumb, dude. Sorry. Here comes the baritone guitar, And
That's
so now
amazing.
we've got this thing, we got this language with the four of us and 3 records, and they're getting more and more advanced.
Right.
I think not only the horn section and but again, like I said, I had nothing to do with it. So a lot of the direction falls under what Jack Stratton wants to do. So if we're skydiving on the next record, then,
by all means,
parachuting, holding a baritone, then that's what's going to happen.
whatever you guys do, I will be there, and I will watch it, and I will listen, and I will love it. But again, that goes back to the brand thing. I think, of the last 10 years, Jack Stratton and the Wolfpack crew have understood the brand and the image better than just about anybody else out there. I mean, you can instantly tell you're watching a Wolfpack branded video just by the way it looks, or the way the drums sound, or the way the bass tone is. Like they have nailed that. And to me, I don't know. I think I'm just so fascinated by how they pulled that off. I mean,
it's fun to watch. Yeah. I mean, it's just kind of from an out, you know, because I'm in the family, but you know, not in the band or whatever. So it's kind of cool to watch as just sort of from a fan perspective, just kind of how they have put it all together and packaged it.
It's really inspiring, cool. Man. It really inspires me to say like, well, them and, you know, the other band that you're a part of, Snarky Puppy, like what you guys have done over the last 8 to 10 years has really showed me the power of like, hey, if you understand, first of all, if you make really great music that people want to listen to, right? That's the first requirement, kind of the most important part. If you can do that, and then you can come up with an interesting concept, an interesting idea. In some ways, the gatekeepers are dead. Like you don't need an A&R guy to hopefully drop into your gig and write you a check to go make a record. Like you can do it online. So speaking of, you know, Snarky Puppy, how did that all come together? Was it your proximity in, you know, being in Texas? Because I know a lot of that came from the North Texas scene, right?
Sure. Yeah. Well, here's another band that I had nothing to do with, right? I just tend to fall into these cool things.
Funny how that happens, man.
Weird. I know. I'm glad I'm active on my email.
Yeah.
Checking my emails, you know? Yeah, they started, a bunch of the guys were in school together up at the University of North Texas, which is a world-renowned jazz school, you know. And the joke I've always told is that, like, when I was at TCU, UNT, North Texas, was just the school up north with a shitty football team. Like, I didn't even know that they had a jazz program until after school. And I was meeting these guys at gigs. I was like, guys are all really good. What the heck? Yeah. Oh, those are UNT guys. And I was like, the football school? You know? And so they were the band. They were like the cool band in Dallas that I would like go check out,
right?
You know, because they were just monster players and the tunes were really cool and they were, you know, fun to watch. And then I started meeting them personally, like at jam sessions, like at these big jazz groove R&B jam sessions that they would have in Dallas. Erykah Badu's band used to host a bunch of stuff, and so we'd all go out there and play. And I had known a lot of the cats that were doing the Badu stuff and the R&B stuff. And so I was playing with them, and then the Snarky guys kind of started coming in. And so that's sort of how we all met. And we ended up doing a bunch of gospel records together. Robert Seawright, Sput, as you may know him, was one of the early drummers in Snarky Puppy that was kind of brought in when the band kind of migrated to Dallas. And he was always like bringing different players together and grabbing members. Him and Mike Leroy's pulling in members. And that's kind of how the band started to sort of build a little bit. And so I ended up in the group just as a sub, really. I was playing a lot with Mike and Sput, and you know, there was a couple gigs where they just needed a guitar player, and so I came in to do it, and just ended up in the fold that way, which is pretty much how everyone who wasn't like the original 6 or 7 has gotten into the band,
right?
But yeah, and then it's just become this massive entity. And I think what's so beautiful about it is that like each individual player has their own thing beyond the band,
right,
that they've always had. So it's like, if you start listening to Snarky Puppy, I mean, you can just listen to music from the members of the band for the rest of your life,
right?
If you want to do that, you know. And so, yeah, our kind of like brand thing, quote unquote, would be like we were doing these live in the studio videos that got put on YouTube. But for us, it was like we were a road band.
Right.
We were just road dogging. And the YouTube thing was like, well, try it, see what happens. And then it became this thing. And everyone was like, oh, yeah, the YouTube band.
Right.
And we're like, no, we're like, we're a band. Like, we just found out that, you can put your shit on YouTube and people will see it better.
Yeah, but dude,
rather
that's
than
the
driving,
thing. It's like
20 hours and playing for 5 people every night.
Exactly, man. Exactly.
Which we still were doing for a while.
Yeah, and hopefully you still can do that. Except you'll just be playing, once. Well, before the pandemic, you guys were playing to a lot bigger crowds, and then after the pandemic, I imagine it's going to be. I can't imagine 2019 Snarky Puppy. You guys are going to like the poorhouse in Charleston and playing to 200 people. You know what I mean? Like,
no, I don't think we were, but I think maybe I was as a solo artist.
but that's the
yeah,
thing.
I mean, you know, the band's become we're just incredibly grateful that it's been so well received across the world, literally globally.
Well, it's because you're real good. Like, that's the thing. It's like, you got to keep coming back to this thing of like, yeah, you can YouTube and branding and marketing and your whole aesthetic and everything. But if you don't have,
if it's not a quality product,
exactly,
it's hard to sell it. I get it.
Exactly.
Totally get it.
And so when I think of Snarky Puppy, I don't think of it as like the original 6 or 7 members. I think of it as like, well, honestly, if you really want to boil it down, it is almost like its own kind of label. Like you just said, you can go and listen to every member of Snarky Puppy has their own stuff out, you know, yourself included, that you can go and listen to. And the band is a sort of network of those people that are coming together to combine forces. You know, it's like the Avengers, right? You guys are all just and I love that. I think it's amazing, you know, killing it, man.
It's a family, man. I owe a ton to that whole ensemble, that organization, you know, so I'll keep doing it whenever they say we can get on a plane again. I guess we can get on a plane, but whenever we can play a gig.
Not get on a plane, but you're that's true. Where are you going to go?
Yeah. Good point.
You're going to fly to
the poorhouse, play for 200 people.
Go play.
I'll do that. I'll do that right now. I'll play for 2 people.
I don't care. Yeah, I'm feeling you, man. I would love to play in front of people. We did a live stream thing last year that was a ton of fun. Cool. And it was a blast, but God, it's real different when you're playing and then you finish a song and it's just, oh wait, I'm in my basement still. Like,
crickets.
It's like, oh, well, there's 3,000 people watching or 2,200 people watching. Like, oh, cool. I can't tell.
You sure?
Yeah. Right. It's just a number at that point, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm really looking forward to being able to get back to do that. And and you're bringing up a really interesting point that has come up pretty much with every episode of this podcast this season, which has been this theme of the way you sort of make it and the way that you get further along and make steps in your career is through relationships, right? Like the way you just described both Fearless Flyers and Snarky Puppy, it's like, it's who you know, right?
Sure.
Right. I mean, it's like,
yes, it is. And it's an interesting, I tread lightly when I say that because I don't want people to think, you know, because you getting into the music business that like you just need to use people for their connections, right?
Well, that's what you would call networking.
Right. But even
that's different.
Because sometimes feels skunky.
That's what I'm saying. Exactly. So what I'm saying is like the idea of, oh, I'm going to a networking event, right?
Right.
That whole thing is, oh, all of these people have come to this place to see, okay, what do you do? Where are you at? And how can I use you to further my career? Right. Which is not what you're talking about. No.
That's not what we're talking about.
No.
We're talking about building relationships.
Yes. Friendships.
Yeah.
Really.
Friendships. Actually, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
So that is what makes this business turn around is relationships and friendships. I mean, it really is.
Yeah, man. And
so
you would say, I mean, well, you really described it, you know, when you were in college and you just saw the gospel choir in the student center, you just went and were like, hey, I'd love to play. You start to develop these, you know, relationships over time. And if you are good and you're reliable and you're a good hang and you're a good friend to people, these things, it's like a rising tide raises all ships.
Yeah.
As they
say.
You
know, I mean, you have to, like, when you are going after a new opportunity, obviously there is going to be some kind of like self-fulfillment there because you want, like for me, I was like, I want to learn how to play gospel music. I want to play with this drummer. It was like a lot of things that I wanted to fulfill for myself. But as a result, I made new friends. They learned stuff from me. I did stuff for them. You know, it was like a symbiotic kind of relationship there, you know? And so I think if you approach every opportunity as like, well, yes, I do need something for myself, but be prepared to give tenfold from yourself to that relationship, and reciprocate things, that's when great connections are still formed. I'm still friends with those people from the gospel choir. All right. I was just texting with that drummer buddy a little while ago, you know? So that's how you form connections is don't ever keep it one-sided.
Right.
Invest. Invest. There you go.
Invest in people, invest in friendships and relationships. And
right.
And that's the thing, man. If you surround yourself with people who are talented and who are willing to invest in you, and you are willing to invest in them, that's how that's the long game. At least from my perspective, that's how you stay in this for the long term.
Yep.
You know,
Absolutely.
I love that, man. All right, so let's talk gear.
All right.
I've been staring at your room here for 45 minutes.
It's a mess. Yours looks cooler. You have like cool stuff in the background.
Well, you didn't.
If I turned the camera this way, you'd think I like.
Oh, yeah. Well,
was a hoarder.
Speaking of, I'll just show you. Turning the camera. So this is what I'm seeing.
Oh yeah, that's awful. Just kidding. Looks like Home Depot.
Exactly. So it's not as glamorous. I can shoot this way. I have like 2 angles in this room I can shoot, and then that's it.
Me too. If I were to turn it, you would see like there's all kinds of weird stuff. Like there's just this thing hanging out. There's like free drink tickets from this club.
I have a giant pile of yeah.
There's an old iPod.
Oh, dude,
look at
that.
There's these plastic cats.
Oh my god.
There's a harmonica.
The fact
this is cool. The automaton.
Oh yeah.
Which I think the batteries are out, unfortunately. But look up these.
That's great. Yeah, I have a giant pile of just crap over there that is off camera that nobody can see, but it's I don't know what to do with this, so it's going to sit here for 6 more months while I figure this out. So, speaking of gear.
All right.
New PRS.
Yeah, man.
Congratulations, first of all.
Thank you.
That's a big deal. Signature PRS guitar.
Yeah.
What was your thought process behind it? How did that come about?
Well, I've known the family up there for a few years, actually. I think almost 5 years. And I was using their 594 guitars. I still use them, but was really loving those and playing some of the amps as well. And I guess it was October, November of 2019. They said, "You want to do something?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" And they were like, like, let's make you a guitar. Like, let's make you a model.
Yeah.
And I was like a supermodel? And they were like, no, like a guitar model. Like,
wow.
And
was that another email situation?
Joke.
Like Corey Wong, you get it and you're like, well, hold on, what are we doing? What?
No, well, it was a little bit. Yeah, I think maybe that's kind of how I approach most things in life. Wait a minute. Let me consult with my pretend lawyers. Right. But no, they were just like, no, we want to, I think what they were like, we want to be your guitar builder. We want to make you your thing. And I was like, oh, all right, let's see what this means. And yeah, of course, maybe I was a little quote unquote skeptical or something, whatever. Not in a negative sense, but like, it was a deep down. I was thrilled, blown away.
It's a big deal, man.
Absolutely, just through the moon excited.
Yeah.
But put on a front of like, whatever. No, not really. But so we went up there and just started sketching stuff and talking about pickups and resistors and neck shapes and wires and talking to Paul is like, I can't keep up with that guy. He's just so, his mind is always on the next thing, always on the next tweak. And right there, I was just like, okay, I got to work with these folks because this is just going to be super fun. And I'm going to learn a ton about this whole thing.
Right.
I ended up learning a lot about myself.
Yeah.
It was like a pretty big emotional year, a lot of respect. And so we really dug in there and did it, man. I look at it and I'm like, holy crap, we did this. Like this is a dream come true, literally.
Yeah.
That was one of those things when I was 14. It was like, I'm going to have a signature guitar. No idea how that's going to happen, but one day I would like to have that. and here we are. They made that possible. And
That's amazing, man. That is really, really amazing.
Yeah,
it's really inspiring.
And I'm just joking. I don't mean to sound ungrateful or anything like that. Of course, absolutely not. But Paul's a fun guy to kind of like go back and forth with.
Right.
So like deep down, I knew they were going to nail it. I knew they were going to knock it out of the park and just come up with the most incredible thing. But I didn't want to show all my cards right at the
So did you know that you wanted it to be like your version, your take on a Strat, like when they first, or did you kind of go through some options? Because I can see the rack of your guitars there, and you've got the bases covered between Fender and Gibson and the whole style of thing. So was it always would you quantify yourself as like a Strat player, and that was what you're going to go with, or did you kind of have to?
No, that was going to be it from the beginning. I mean, because one of my dear favorite axes ever is my blue Grosh.
Yeah.
Right. That's been with me forever and is not going anywhere. So stop asking for it, internet. So they knew that I was a Strat style guy. The single coil thing, the humbucker thing combined is just my sound. And so we were like, let's refine this. Let's direct this into something new, into something forward. And let's make it so that anyone can pick it up and get their thing out of it.
Yeah.
And so that was the biggest goal, I think, with how we looked at every angle, was like, can a player who's not me get this guitar and be them?
Right.
I mean, yeah, there's parameters. It's a single coil guitar with a humbucker. So that we've sort of established, but that's my thing and a lot of other players' things, obviously. But we wanted it to really be kind of an open canvas, I think is the term we like to use for it. And I was a little bit like, because PRS is up until the Silver Sky, they didn't really do a lot of single coil type instruments, but obviously the Silver Sky is a brilliant guitar,
right? And
it made a huge impact.
Yeah.
And so that I was like, well, yeah, great.
That's awesome.
We'll do my thing with it.
Yeah. So when it comes to things like amps, effects, your guitar, how would you describe your sound? Is there one thing that really sticks out to you that you always go for? Or being a working guy, doing sessions and all kinds of gigs, are you really more so playing to the situation that you happen to be in?
It's both. I mean, I'm well-versed enough, I guess, in studio tones and knowledge and things like that I can pretty much get as many sounds as I'm generally called upon to get. And, of course, people are calling me because they want whatever it is, the specific thing that I can do. They don't generally call me to totally sound like somebody completely different.
Right.
And so, but I've definitely been asked to stretch my boundaries and play with some sounds that I'm not super familiar with. But I enjoy that challenge. And so I try to stay up on as many types of applicable guitar sounds as there are around, which of course it's an infinite possibility. But, when I am writing my own music, there's kind of a thing that I go for, but at the same time, I just want to make sure that the composition has what it needs,
Right.
Like this record I'm putting out in April, the lead tones are like way higher gain than I normally use.
Right.
Just because.
Yeah.
Because it sounded great with that track.
Right.
And it was really fun to plug into a plug-in and just shred.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about your new record too. So,
sure.
What did you self-produce? Did you do it mostly at home? What was the recording and production process like?
Well, a little background. It's the second installment of the baritone sessions. So this is volume 2. Which is more explosions, more power, more ticket sales, whatever, more box office.
Sunday.
Smash. Yeah, exactly. More longer lines at the concession stand. So yeah, there's a lot going on the record, but I produced all the guitars here and produced everyone like virtually that played on it, pretty much. A lot of emails back and forth and sending of files and, varying degrees of specific instructions for me, but also combined with like, hey, I love what you do. do what you do
Right.
on this track.
Right.
And so there's quite a cast. I think there maybe is 12, 13 different people on the album. I think maybe even more.
Wow.
I had to go. There's some right there actually in those boxes.
Right.
I got to count who's on it, but it was kind of an excuse because with the baritone music, because it is mostly all produced here at home, done with sending out files. Like it was just an excuse for me to get all my favorite friends and players to do something.
Right.
And so, there's a couple different drummers, couple different bass players, couple different keyboard players, couple different guest soloists on various instruments, horns, there's all kinds of stuff going on.
Man,
so
that's awesome, dude. Did you run into any issues working remotely with everyone like that? I mean, I imagine there was probably some logistical and production struggles that you guys had to work through.
Actually there weren't.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I think, there honestly was not any issue. I think the only extra step that a couple of the guys had to take where they didn't have a home setup. And so they just went to another studio.
Got it.
So that was just an extra set of phone calls.
Yeah. Right.
Like, is the studio available? Okay, cool. So-and-so would like to come in and record there. Okay,
right.
Great. But pretty much it was like, here's this, here's what I'm hearing on it. Get it back to me soon, but take your time.
Right. Right.
And of course, there's no one on the record that I had never played with before.
Got it.
So I kind of already had an idea of how things were going to work. And so, it was actually very, very smooth.
Nice, man.
It all together. Yeah.
I can't wait to hear it, dude. Do you have a release date yet?
April 16th.
Okay.
We got a single coming out. Sounds funny. The single. It's just the first song. No, so we got the singles coming out March 12th, I think.
Okay.
And then there will be another one April 9th, I believe. And the one on March 12th I'm really excited because there's a guitar player on that track that is not me. That is really, really good.
All right. Okay.
And you're going to be like, wow. It's like, it's the favorite, maybe it is my favorite guitar solo on any of my records, and it's not by me.
That should be your tagline for your promotion. You're going to be like, wow.
You're going to be like, wow.
Wow. Mark Letieri.
So it's a fun tune.
Dude, I can't wait to hear it. Thanks so much for coming on, man. This has
been my
pleasure,
pleasure, man.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rhett.
We've been kicking around a video idea.
You need to send me your homework.
I know.
Do you remember what your homework was?
Yes, I do. Here's the thing.
Write me a couple melodies, buddy.
I know. We haven't.
There's no deadline. Take your time.
But I want to do. I'm trying to think of the name of the video. The name of the video first, and then
cool.
That might inform.
All right.
What we do.
I'm ready.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good time.
Sweet, dude.
Mark, you're the man.
You're the man. Appreciate it, buddy.
Yeah. So there you go. I hope you gained as much as I did from this interview with Mark. Like I said at the beginning of the episode, you really couldn't ask for a nicer, sweeter, more humble, down-to-earth guy than Mark Letieri. And actually, that's been kind of a theme on this, on the podcast in general, on Backstage Journal, the whole podcast. Like, these people, no matter how high up in their career they go or how experienced they are, pretty much everyone we've managed to talk to on this show has been incredibly humble and kind and down to earth, and I love that. Those are the type of people that I want to surround myself with and know. And Mark is absolutely no exception to that. So go show Mark some love. Go buy one of his video courses. I'll have all that stuff linked down below. Go follow him on Instagram and go stream his new album. It's coming out April 16th. And it'll be out on all the streaming platforms where you can stream music. So that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this interview with Mark. Let me know in the comments what you thought and who you'd like to see on the podcast next week. And we will see y'all real soon.